Got myself here some black gold compost, baby. This is what makes my garden grow. There's so many different ways to compost, and it's so ridiculously easy, you'd just be stupid not to. This is a tumbler. I got this one at Aldi for like 30-40 bucks. That middle aisle at Aldi. It's one of those times I'm walking through there and the words, "the wand chooses the wizard," comes into my mind, because I was going for probably M&Ms or something, and I walked out with a compost tumbler. But here, let's see if we can get a little closer there. So here we got, there's some old grass in there, and there's coffee grounds, all that sort of stuff. I like this because it's a very small space. Very, very easy to manage. You just stuff your tumbler full. You can aerate it quite easily by giving it a spin. It's a lot of fun. Up off the ground, it will leak, so it will get droplets of water. And if you're on something like a balcony, you would want to put a tray under there. When I was living in an apartment and I was using that, I had a tray that I put a little tray with some about an inch of soil, and I grew some grass under there, cat grass to be specific, and let my cats chew on that. So yeah, that works really, really well, and it's great for small spaces. But the compost pile that I'm building today, or filling today, is going to be a bin. Let's go have a look at that. So here is one of these big sort of upside down composters. I think that's what they called it. I can't remember actually. But look, these run about 200 bucks at Bunnings. This one was here on the property when we moved in. So I'm a real cheapskate. I kept it. It's mine now. It's cool because you just stuff things in top. You can see I've got some old plants in there right now. And this little thing down the bottom, you can harvest your compost from that. It's not a perfect system, but it's a pretty good one. I have to say, I really, really like it. However, to spend, some 150, 200 bucks on one of those, especially when I had this bad boy. This is just an old bin. I'm in a bit of an awkward spot here, because I put my compost in a tucked away corner because I've got to use all the other space. But this is just an old bin. And in this bin, I've got some compost in there now. That's still kind of cooking. I'll get onto that in a second. But that's just an old bin. I've got some aeration holes drilled down the side, and I've actually got quite a few drainage holes down the bottom, and they're much larger holes to allow for drainage. You will see on larger properties, they just have like an open air pile, and you can do that. You can absolutely do that. However, I'm in an urban backyard, and if I had an open pile, that will attract rats, mice, possums, birds, you name it. I don't mind attracting possums and birds, but they'll go a little crazy and they can sort of mess up this whole ecosystem that I'm managing here. So it is better to keep these sorts of things covered, because I'm an urban homesteader, not a large-scale farmer. So, there's a little wasp. Hey. And so keeping this covered does help me manage it. Now, let's get into some dynamics of composting. Now you've seen a pile, let's have a look at the science of composting. Composting in its simplest form, or its simplest explanation, is broken down carbon and nitrogen. As it breaks down, it turns into a thing called humus, not hummus, and it is a great plant food. The forest floor is compost, essentially. It is just the breaking down plant matter and organic matter of the forest, and this recycles nutrients back into the soil. Really, really simple explanations there. For our purposes, on the urban homestead, we're using just a small little bin, and we're going to fill it with a ratio of browns and greens. Browns are carbons. greens and nitrogens. So your browns are going to be things like raked up leaves. We're going to see quail bedding, hay, and what else? You can even use cardboard. I don't really use a lot of cardboard. I recycle that in other ways. You can use sawdust, wood chips. Wood chips will take longer to break down. Sawdust is pretty good. So anything brown, carbon based. Your greens are going to be things like your lawn clippings, your discarded plant matter. So if I take this dead leaf, that's still got some green in it, so that is more nitrogen. Just chuck that in. You're going to use all of your kitchen scraps or your veggie scraps, and then coffee grounds are one of the best, and I'll use some coffee grounds here. I've got a great source for coffee grounds. That's my little secret too. Sorry, you can't know that one. But then I have a kind of a unique way of generating, the basis for my compost, and we'll go into that. Hey Katusha, I just come to talk about your flooring. This rabbit's flooring, or bedding rather, is hay. Sometimes we throw hemp on there and dried leaves. We haven't raked up any leaves and thrown those down lately. We just haven't had any. But isn't she adorable? But Katusha will pee and poop usually in that back corner. Some rabbits are very, very good at just going in the corner. Sorry, I won't bother you too long. But we'll take this bedding. We'll grab a little bit here. Take that one. Thank you, Tushy. And we will take this over to the quail. And here we have the quails. And we'll take that bedding that I just lifted out of Katusha's pen, and I will drop that, rabbit poo and everything, into that. Now the rabbit poo, it doesn't harm the quails. And what it does is it attracts a lot of worms. And as the worms come up looking for the rabbit poo, the quails, they'll come in and they'll scratch up what I lay down for them, and they will dig up the worms and grubs. So it's kind of a little feeding program for them. The rabbit poo attracts the worms and grubs, feeds the quail. The quail then poo on the bedding here. And when I clean that out, so it's important to understand that it's the quail poo is very high in nitrogen, and it can't just be put straight onto the garden beds because it can damage the plants. So the rabbit poo can, but the quail poo cannot. So we take that quail poo amongst all this bedding, which is now carbon and browns, and we put it on the compost pile. So now that you've seen where I get my browns from, we can just sort of start building our compost pile. Now there's loads of different ways you can organize your pile. Some will say you got to have 5 parts brown to 1 part green, so you got to have 3 parts green to 1 part brown, then you got 1.5 times pi to the square. Nonsense. You leave it lying around long enough, it's going to decompose. End of story. So what I do is I take my raked up leaves, my quail, rabbit poo bedding. I take, if I want to throw a bit of cardboard in there, sawdust, what have you, I chuck it in. And then I add greens. And I add greens as I go. So quail, rabbit, bedding, lots of hay, raked up leaves, there's lots of poo. Also, I understand, I'm handling all this poo with my bare hands. That's just, listen, I've been doing this a long time. It ain't no problem. Things like this, your sticks, they're not going to break down very quickly. They'll need to be sifted out later, but I really don't mind. Fur's not a problem. Fur will break down really quickly. So I'll just chuck all that in there. Oh, bada bing, bada boom. No problem. Okay. Yep, that's all good. Then you've got this at home. All of your kitchen scraps. So I got banana peel, I got onions and garlic from where I was cooking. Not a lot you can't put in there. I'm trying to think. Is there anything? No. Look, as long as it was once alive, and when I say alive, I mean it grew in the ground, in the dirt, then it's gonna be fine. All your fruit and veg, everything. Make sure you peel the stickers off. The stickers off your apples, they won't decompose, so they go in. And then we get to my secret ingredient, which is no secret actually. It's just where I get it from is a secret. Sorry, you can't know that. So I go to this coffee shop every day, and they actually roast their own coffee beans. So I've got this would be browns. This is the chaff off the coffee bean where they roast their coffee beans. So yeah, there's a whole bag of that. And then in there too, there's coffee grounds. So coffee grounds are very, very high in nitrogen, and they're considered a green, and they supercharge your compost because they're so high in nitrogen. So that is going to just really ramp up the breaking down process. So I'm just gonna get all that in there. I don't like how they give it to me in plastic bags, but what can you do? It's just kind of like, they're managing a coffee shop. I'd rather them use paper bags or just put it in a reusable bucket, but hey, what can I do? I can only be the change I want to see in the world. Can't begrudge them their own conveniences. So that, and then I got 2 more secret ingredients. One of the easier just to show you the entire plant. This is Symphytum officinale, so otherwise known as comfrey. Now, comfrey has really deep roots. It'll burrow quite deep, or the roots will dig quite deep into the ground, and they will absorb nutrients and water from deep down. And the leaves very, very high in nitrogen. I can also feed this to the rabbits. And these flowers, native bees love them. I don't see as many honeybees on this, or sorry, European bees on this, as I do the blue native bees. So if you want native bees, plant comfrey. They love it. But the leaves are very high in nitrogen, and they grow fast. Like, I just stick that in the ground and it'll take root. So I'm not advising you, I'm not telling you that you should just snap a leaf off from a plant that's on display at Bunnings, but I've heard of people who do. That's very naughty to steal from a giant conglomerate such as Bunnings. So yeah, secret ingredient number 1, comfrey. Cut it up, sure. Do I need to? Nah. And secret ingredient number 2, take some compost from the old bin. So just chuck that in there. That's going to be full of worms, and there's a little worm there. Oh no, he's gone. Hey, come back. No. So it'll be full of worms, and also all that bacteria, because we are bacteria farming here. You can buy a product called Compost Starter from Bunnings. Don't. I'm ruining my chances of a Bunnings sponsorship in this video. Don't bother with it, because the compost that's already in there is good enough to kickstart, your bacteria growth there. Also, if you're starting completely from scratch in a completely sterile bin and you're just throwing, you're throwing dried leaves and coffee grounds in there, the bacteria will come. If you build it, they will come. So you just don't need to. It's just not worth spending money on something like that. Worms, do you need worms? No, you don't need worms. That tumbler that I showed at the beginning, that is off the ground, and somehow it always has worms. I don't know how the worms get in there, but the worms are there. I've never put worms in there. And again, that was started off completely sterile on an apartment, on a balcony at an apartment, and it had worms in there one day, and God only knows how they get there. So yeah, the other thing you want to do with your compost is give it a good turn. So you can take one of these. Now, this is one that I found, so You know, again, I don't spend a lot of money on my garden tools because I'm cheap, but also everything you could possibly want has already been made. We don't need to buy another thing, but I have one, and all it is just a little spiral on the handle, and you can just stick that in there. And I love doing this. Because we're composting in a bin, it is important to aerate your compost. So I get that all the way down in there, and then I can just pull that bad boy up. Yeah. It's satisfying, like popping a pimple is, you know? And then give that a shake. Some of it's stuck, that's fine. Just pop that off, there you go. So you're just sort of turning your compost around and keeping it aerated. Those microbes need to breathe. So you're letting your microbes breathe there. And the other one is water. So because I'm covering my compost, I do need to water it. So you should be able to squeeze and then just wring out a few drops. Think like a sponge that's sitting on your sink. Not completely wet, but just damp. We do need that moisture. You can make things too moist, and then it becomes an anaerobic without oxygen process, and that stinks. So if you go to your local river at low tide, you know, and you see the mud flat, that's going to stink. That's an anaerobic activity happening. So if you don't want your compost to stink, and you probably don't, you need to keep it aerobic, which means you need to keep on aerating it, and then just keep it moist. So this could do with some moisture. So I'll probably just give it a bit of a water, especially since I'm just making this pile today. One way that people water their compost is by peeing on it. Now, if you're in an apartment balcony, you might have neighbors who can see you peeing on your compost. If you're in a backyard, you need to be aware that your neighbors might be able to see you peeing on your compost. Pee contains some really good chemicals that help that process. Ammonia, nitrogen. It is quite good for your compost. Pee on your compost if you can, but do not run afoul of your neighbors by waving it around while you water your compost. A watering can will do fine. Not going to get my YouTube channel banned in the first couple of videos by showing a video of me peeing on my compost, so let's just do this. Dum da dum dum dum. Pretty simple. You know how to water a compost bin. Is this too much water? Maybe. But there's drainage holes in there, so it doesn't matter. And this is important because I'm keeping my compost covered because I don't want mice and rats. Now, just quickly on the subject of ratios, your browns to greens, I don't bother with that sort of stuff because I'm not hot composting. If you want to do hot composting, the kind you see in those cool videos where there's steam coming off their compost, that's cool. And you will have to get your ratios down. That's pretty hard for me to do on my urban homestead, nor do I really care to be so fussy about it. I've got so much other stuff to do. So I just throw my browns in there and then top up with greens in the form of coffee grounds and my kitchen scraps as I go. So we don't need to worry too much about that. If you're going to do hot composting, it's going to be 50% art, 50% science. Give it a shot if you want to, but it isn't 100% necessary. It just makes compost happen faster. But if you're planting a spring garden, it is the 1st of March now, so I would say get onto regular composting because it's stupid easy, and start this week, and then by spring you're going to have great compost and you can just chuck it on the garden. It's going to be amazing. This is where I'm supposed to say thank you, like and subscribe. I don't know, if you want to. I'm not begging. Just here doing my thing. Anyways. Sorry, I only just watched back the video and realized how rude I sound at the end. Thank you very much for watching my video. It is very nice that you did that. You don't have to like or subscribe or comment. I don't care about serving the algorithm. I am just doing my thing, but I am very grateful that you watched my video. Thank you.